25-001, term limits code revision. Ms. Alegi?
I'll use the microphone so you can hear me this time. And I'm a little bit sick. This bill, it was introduced simply to make the county code consistent with the charter. So last January, Bill 23-028 was effective, and that is the bill that added term limits to Charter Section 206, which is terms of council members. That bill passed. It was placed on the general election on November 5th. The voters voted to approve that charter language. So as a result, Section 206 of the charter now contains all of that bill language. So we have to make sure that the Harford County Code is consistent with the charter. So what we've done is we added the exact same language that was voted on and that is now part of the charter in 206 to Section 4-7 of the Harford County Code so that the two are consistent. And that's all that this bill does.
Thank you. Counsel? Mr. Penman?
I just want to say this is an extraordinary accomplishment for this council, and it was overwhelmingly supported by the constituents that voted last election, I think to the sum of 90%. In a perfect world, it would be 2 terms, but you know, obviously, this is a step in the right direction, and I hope in the future that it will be 2 terms, just to match what the county executive has. But this is an extraordinary accomplishment, and I want to thank the council for the dialogue to establish this term limits. I want to thank our county residents for voting on this. It's an important issue, as you can see from the voter count last election. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Jandrodana?
Thank you. So I think in a perfect world, constituents would vote for whoever they wanted, whenever they wanted, for as long as they wanted. So we compromised and we went with 3 terms that you could be a council person for. You can come off, and then in 20 years, maybe like somebody like Jacob down there can come back and run as a council person, or somebody serves 3 terms as a council person and then serves 3 terms as a president. So I think anything you put in front of the citizens and you give them an opportunity, you're going to get a large percentage. That's been fact over the years, that they'll vote for pretty much whatever is on there, so whether they agree with it or not. But I'm glad to see this went through, so I hope there's no other changes going down the road for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Bennett?
And I've had some different interpretations I've heard in the public about the consecutive language. So I was hoping maybe Ms. Alegi could just clarify that for public consumption. You know, for instance, 3 terms from now, I'll be 39 years old. Then if I take 4 years off, at 43, can I then run again? Like my clock starts over, or because I did 3 consecutive terms, I'm done? As long as I take 4 years off, I'm able to return.
Right. It's 3 years for you guys. I mean, it's right. And it doesn't, nothing counts until after the 2026
Right.
election. So all of this time prior to, that's the way that the bill was drafted and passed last year.
So as long as you take 4 years off, you're able to run again. And the same is true for county executive. If you've done your 2 terms,
Absolutely.
then you can
Then
run
you can
again.
yes, after you've taken a term off, so previous county executives, if they've had 2
A lot,
terms.
Eileen Rearman could be
they
coming back.
They can come back and they can run for another 2 terms. Yep. Are you soliciting?
Are you done, Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Penman?
I just want to follow up with Councilman Giangiordano's comments. I do agree that this was a compromise, but I do take exception the fact that whatever you put in front of the constituents, they won't be smart enough to figure it out. I think we have a very smart constituent base. I think they voted on this because it was a great bill. It was progress. You look across the entire nation, this is supported universally, both by Republicans and Democrats, almost 80%. So just because we put it in front of the constituents doesn't mean it's going to get passed. We've seen things not get passed in the past. So again, I'm glad this is here. I look forward to progress in the future.
Mr. Jandrodana?
So I think we can go back and forth and say whether you put something in front of somebody, they're going to vote yes. Overwhelmingly, they have. But I think bottom line comes down to, in local elections, when you have local people, it can be influenced by outside forces, whether they're developers or special interest people, to get the people that they want on the council to vote their way, especially when somebody's new. And if they're only there for 2 terms, I think unfortunately they could get overwhelmed by being voted in. And I don't think they see their full potential. I think sometimes that you need to be in these seats. You're dealing with, you're not dealing with the same level that you are on the federal level, where they're there for 25 or 30 years. And even then, even if you put term limits in, what would you put in for, for a senator or for a House of Representative person? So anyway, it's done, so appreciate it, and thank you.
Anyone else, Mr.?
Just follow up. I don't know how the developers contributed to the vote for term limits with 90%. If you ask developers, there are some that oppose it altogether. So I understand what you're saying from an elected official side of things, but the term limits, I don't think the developers influence the vote for term limits 90% across the county whatsoever. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Mr. Giangiordano.
I think it comes down to follow the money, where they put their money for the candidates that they want to get in the office, so that they can hopefully get a favor. Not saying that that absolutely happens, but there is special interest groups out there and people that will fund a candidate so that they can get a candidate in that will vote the way they want to be voted. I mean, if you look at the campaign finance reports and you go down and you look, you see where the money comes from. So, whether you want to agree with that or not, those are facts. The money shows where it comes from. The different groups, special interest groups, it happens on a local level, it happens on all levels.
Okay. Anyone else? Ms. Dixon, do we have anyone signed up?
There is no one signed up, Mr. President.
Thank you. Then let's conclude this public hearing for Bill 25001 and be looked at a different session. And we're going to go ahead and take a short recess. We have a few minutes to kill before we start about 8. Legislative session day 25-004. I would ask you to stand for the pledge, followed by the opening prayer by Councilmember Riley. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, thank you for the gift of life, the opportunity to serve the people of our county. I pray that you will guide our council as they meet and discuss matters with regard to our county. I pray that their motivation and everything they want to do is for the good of the public and not their own. I pray that we'll be able to solve our county's problems and make good policies that might address those problems. Help us to be competent and excellent in our governance. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill. Help us to speak with clarity and restraint, and give us a spirit of service. It is in your most blessed name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Riley. Agenda item number 5, consideration of petitions, applications, appointments, and nominations. Commission on Disabilities. May I have a motion for the appointment?
Council President, I move to approve the appointment of Councilwoman Robert.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Penman. It's been moved and seconded to approve Ms. Robert for the Commission on Disabilities. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President?
Aye.
Mrs. Robert?
Aye.
Mr. Penman?
Aye.
Mr. Giangiordano?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mrs. Bulsato? Aye. Mr. Bennett?
Aye.
There being 7 votes in the affirmative and 0 in the negative, the appointment is hereby approved. Harford County Community Mediation Commission, may I have a motion?
Council President, I move to approve the appointment of Councilwoman Robert.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. It's moved and seconded to approve the appointment of Ms. Robert. Is there any discussion? Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President?
Aye.
Mrs. Robert? Aye. Mr. Penman?
Aye.
Mr. Giangiordano?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mrs. Bulsato? Aye. Mr. Bennett?
Aye.
There being 7 votes in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, the appointment is hereby approved. Mental Health and Addictions Advisory Board, may I have a motion?
Council President, I move to approve the appointment of Councilwoman Robert.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Penman. It's been moved and seconded to approve Ms. Robert to the Mental Health and Addictions Advisory Board. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President,
Aye.
Mrs. Robert,
Aye.
Mr. Penman,
Aye.
Mr. Giordano.
Aye.
Mr. Riley,
Aye.
Mrs. Bolsato. Aye. Mr. Bennett.
Aye.
There being 7 votes in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, the appointment is hereby approved. Personnel Committee, may I have a motion, please?
Council President, I move to approve the appointment of Councilman Bennett.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. It's been moved and seconded to approve Mr. Bennett to the Personnel Committee. Is there any discussion? Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President,
Aye.
Mrs. Robert,
Aye.
Mr. Penman.
Aye.
Mr. Giordano.
Aye.
Mr. Riley.
Aye.
Mrs. Bolsato. Aye. Mr. Bennett.
Aye.
Being 7 votes in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, the appointment is hereby approved. Social Services Advisory Board, may I have a motion?
Council President, I move to approve the appointment of Councilwoman Robert.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Been moved and seconded to approve Ms. Robert to the Social Services Advisory Board. Is there any discussion? Council, if I may, I'd like to show my appreciation to Ms. Robert for stepping up and taking this position. I've held this position since coming on the council, and I appreciate her stepping up and taking it over. Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President,
Aye.
Mrs. Robert,
Aye.
Mr. Penman.
Aye.
Mr. Giordano.
Aye.
Mr. Riley.
Aye.
Mrs. Bolsato. Aye. Mr. Bennett.
Aye.
There being 7 votes in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, the appointment is hereby approved. 6 special presentations, we have none. 7, approval of minutes. Legislative Day 25-003, January 21st, 2025. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes stand approved. 8, introduction and consideration of resolutions, we have none. 9, introduction of bills, we have none. 10, introduction and consideration of amendments, we have none. 11, call for final reading of bills, we have none. 12, enrollment of bills, we have none. 13, unfinished business, Bill 24-041, Mr. Riley.
Mr. President, I'd like to withdraw Bill 24041, Chapter 267, zoning setbacks for extraction and blasting activities.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. 14, new business, we have none. 17, comments and input from attending citizens. Ms. Dixon, do we have anyone signed up?
There is no one signed up, Mr. President.
16, business from council members. Ms. Robert?
I just wanted to mention a couple things. I did attend the last Mental Health Addictions Advisory Council last Tuesday, and just wanted to kind of give everyone an idea of what they're talking about is pretty much identifying resources for mental health crises. One of the biggest things they want to look at is the co-responder model, in which law enforcement and social workers go out to crises. I'm familiar with the program as I was trained in Baltimore County to do so, and did that initially when Baltimore County had created their program. So I think it's a great program to have, and hopefully it'll fruition. But it's good for those crisis intervention, including the juvenile domestic ones. Last night I attended the CAB meeting, and so I did appreciate that Mr. Peters of Cordish did speak, and it sounds like they are trying to increase small businesses in our area and in the shopping centers, and trying to make sure that on Route 40 we have those shopping centers as full as possible. But also entertainment was mentioned a lot last night, and so he's willing to work with the community on trying to look at that aspect. So I was grateful to hear that as well. And then just to remind everyone that February is Black History Month, and there are a couple events. There is the Langston Hughes Youth Oratorical Contest, which is Saturday the 8th from 1 to 3 at the Cultural Center at the Opera House in Havre de Grace. And then NAACP is having the Freedom Fun Lunch this year, looking at mentorship and legacy. And we have a great panel of amazing speakers. Our moderator is actually a former NFL player and now a therapist. So it's going to be a great great lunch. And so, and finally, am doing my own community meetings with Edgewood, Joppatown, and my piece of Abington, and that is going out in emails to everyone, but I do have flyers, and they are scheduled. The first one is February 20th in Joppatown. I forgot where they were. Hold on. February 20th at the Town Grill and Pub, February 25th at the Venetian for the Edgewood residents, and March 6th at the Abingdon Grill for the Abingdon residents. So I'm hoping I get to meet everyone. It's really just to get to know me and also to hear voices from my area.
Thank you, Ms. Robert. Mr. Penman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to give a couple updates. One, on the MACO update, we have an Annapolis legislative meeting tomorrow to discuss another round of proposed bills. One bill was particularly alarming to me, House Bill 487, On-House Individuals and Their Rights, which provides on-house individuals or homeless certain protection rights for trespassing or disturbing the peace, meaning you can't stop them from living on the sidewalks, public property, or vehicles. And if an agency interferes with on-house individuals or homeless individuals, the agency can be civilly liable. Look, I'm all for helping those in need and using resources, any resource possible to positively change lives and help the welfare of homeless, but taking away enforcement resources for trespassing and disturbing the peace is not the answer, and this legislation is alarming. We've seen this on the West Coast, and this model just does not work. So please follow that legislation. Hopefully it does not get passed. My next topic is mixed-use development plan. I would like to acknowledge the county executive's most recent public position on the economical and residential importance of mixed-use centers. In June of '23, to reduce urban sprawl, there was a lot of discussion about mixed-use centers and business centers. At the time, the county executive attacked the idea and advocated against high-density housing in business districts. In a statement in November of '23, county executive stated, allowing apartments in business districts makes planning extremely difficult because we don't know if the property may become a retail store with no demands on our schools or homes for families and children. In a remarkable change of position, the county executive gave comment supporting apartments in mixed use. In an Aegis article on January 30th of 2025, just last week, Castley stated, our employees want to live where they can walk along beautiful nature trails, go to happy hours, dine out with their friends, and experience the arts and festivals during the weekends. Cassie went on to explain the county is looking towards mixed-use projects and combined retail and office space with apartments and condominiums. Cassie added that mixed-use development will bring national retailers in the county and attract your young professionals into the workforce. Cassie closed with a statement, clearly we are pursuing a bigger vision that will pay off in the coming years. While I understand the importance of smart, balanced economic growth, you wonder where the county would be if, with the economical strategy implemented 2 years ago. And finally, the recent court case for myself. As many know, the stay for the court action filed by the county executive is set to expire on February 9th. The case is currently pending in Maryland Supreme Court, and I'm confident in the standing of my case to prevent the executive branch from weaponizing the law department and abusing government. Just to reset the stage, they are attempting to remove me from council for being a police officer. They are not trying to remove me for not showing up for 6 months. They are not trying to remove me for committing a felony, but they are removing me because my day job is public safety, a deputy sheriff. The Castley administration believes it's a conflict to be a deputy sheriff, which is a completely separate entity from the county government, and has spent over $100,000 on outside counsel to remove me. And that doesn't even include the law department's time and energy. What a waste of taxpayer dollars and funds. The funny thing is, the administration refused to pay the attorney fees for the council when they were sued by Dion Guthrie because he was removed for pleading guilty to a felony theft. So they don't want to pay the legal fees for a council member charged with a criminal offense, but are overwhelmingly in favor of spending valuable tax dollars on removing a cop from the council. It's a sad time for Harford County that you get persecuted for advocating for public safety or education. We should all want council members with diverse backgrounds, which include public safety and education. But that's not what happened. It's not what's happening here. If you push back on this administration in any way, they will spy on you, they will harass you, and they will file suit against you. This should be a warning to the constituents at the lengths of this administration they will go to obtain power and control. And this should be a warning to my colleagues on the council. Who's next? What's next? What conflict of interest will they go after you and expose, and if you expose their corruption or don't play ball with the executive branch? With all that said, I'm prepared to continue the fight. I'm hopeful that the Supreme Court will render a just ruling and put a stop to the most corrupt and divisive county executive in Harford County history. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Penman. Mr. Giangiordano?
Good evening, Council President. Last Monday, I attended the Board of Ed meeting in regards to the Patriot Program, and I want to sincerely thank the Board of Education members, especially President Dr. Aaron Poynton, Melissa Hahn, Terry Kocher, Lauren Page Strauss, and Diane Alvarez for their support in maintaining the current Patriot Program. The commitment to preserving this valuable initiative is truly appreciated in making a meaningful difference in the lives of our students. So I encourage all schools to consider, I think 17 out of 22 support the Patriot Program. Both the PTA is involved, but I've also been heard from American Legion, different American Legion, that will come and help out with the Patriot Program if they don't have a PTA. So I do encourage some of the schools that don't have a PTA to reach out to the American Legion. A lot of them are, obviously retired. They would love to come help teach the kids about the Patriot Program. So, I also attended legislative night down in Annapolis, put on by the Kleins family and their generous support that they've been over 100 years in Harford County. So myself, I know Councilman Penn was there, and Councilman Riley, and I think Jacob, were you there too? And Jacob too. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Giangiordano. Mr. Riley?
Yeah, just a couple of things. Attended the Voices of Hope annual Rock and Roll for Recovery Bull Roast. Wish them the best. Hope their fundraising went well. Again, as Councilman Giangiordano said, we went down to Annapolis. Got to speak to our legislators. Didn't have a lot of good luck down there. Of course, I have the privilege of living with one, and at least for the next 90 days I'm not, but when I do, it's not good news. I want to congratulate to all the recipients at the Jarrettsville Volunteer Fire Company Annual Awards Banquet. Condolences to all the family and friends who lost loved ones in the Black Hawk and Flight 543 or 5342 collision. Mr. Tibbs, just you said that your brother passed away, so condolences to the Tibbs family, and keep praying for Jeannie. I know she's doing the best she can with what she has, and we all know that's. Well, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Ms. Sottles?
Thank you, Council President. I'll reserve my comments this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Sottles. Mr. Bennett?
Hello, good evening, everybody. It's good to see people out tonight, and to everybody watching at home as well. I also attended the Rock and Roll Recovery fundraiser, which was a great event. One of my favorite things about being a council person the past 2 years is being able to give half of each of my paychecks back to the community, which I've continued to do faithfully throughout my time on the council. Giving to Voices of Hope, the Susquehanna Hose Company, Abingdon Fire Company, the Library Foundation, Boys and Girls Club, the Havre de Grace Colored School, and more just recently. I just think it's like If nothing else, that's $18,000 a year that gets to be in my community, and I'm thankful for that. Recently, I met with MCEA, AFSCME, the AFL-CIO, who all collectively represent our county workers, just trying to get a pulse on how our county workers are feeling, what are their needs, what are their desires, because our county government is nothing without those people who plow the roads, who make sure the lawns get cut, who run the parks and rec centers, who answer the phones when you call, who respond to your "you click, we fix." If we didn't have those people, we don't have a county government. So I think it's always important to be responsive to them. I also attended the Harford Night in Annapolis, as already mentioned, and I just want to share the two big things I've been advocating for at the state level this year is for the governor to take back his proposed $200 million cut to developmental disability services. This is funding that supports those in our community who have greatest need. It provides services so people can go to day centers or to participate in overnight care, door-to-door service, and it pays for the workers who do that work. And I recognize that the state, just like the county, is in a tough position, but just like I'll say of our county budget, the state budget should not be solved by impacting the most vulnerable amongst us. That can't be the answer, and it says a whole lot about who we value, that's the way we go about solving things. And the other thing is just encouraging our Harford delegation to raise the cap on impact fees. As you all know, we've worked on legislation to adjust impact fees, but we've hit the brick wall where if we're going to have it adjust slowly over time, the cap has to be raised, and without that happening, we'll be back to the same conversation 20 years from now, making a drastic change because it hasn't been touched. And then lastly, I just want to share, I'll be at the Langston Hughes Youth Oratorical Contest this Saturday. I go every year. It's one of my favorite events. It's from 1 to 3, and it's so amazing to hear these middle schoolers and high schoolers speak about this poetry by Langston Hughes. And for those of you who don't know, Langston Hughes was a good friend of the principal of the Havre de Grace Colored School and would take the train down and teach the kids about how to write poetry. So he has a local connection to our community, and I just think that's tremendous to think that someone so impactful worldwide spent time with our kids right here in Harford County. That's all I have this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Giangiordano.
I did forget one important thing, that on January 23rd, I read to Mrs. Johnson's second grade class at Prospect Elementary, Mop Top. I did go with my big wig, and we had a question and answer session afterwards with about 15 kids, so they really appreciated that. And I reached out to a couple other school teachers I knew, said would I come to read to their class, and I said yes. So if anybody else wants me to come read to their second grade class, Mop Top, I'd be more than happy. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Giangiordano. 15 business from the president. I'll start by thanking everyone for their well wishes for Jeannie. It seems like every time we turn around, she's having another surgery. We hope this is the last. This was probably the most intrusive for her. But she is bouncing back extremely well. Had her at the doctor's office today after the second week prior to the surgery, and they don't want to see her now for another month. So that's all good stuff. I also want to express my deepest condolences to Phil Shinelli and his family and friends over the passing of his father, Phil. We ask that you keep Phil, Rose, the entire family, and friends in our thoughts and prayers. Council, as you know, we've been notified that Miss Austin will be stepping down as the Harford County Health Officer. And as a result of that, the council, acting as the Board of Health, will be doing a national search for a new health officer. I spoke yesterday with the Deputy Secretary and also Aaron Peniston at the Maryland State Health, and started to get the ball rolling. So we are reaching out to speak with several members of the community that will help us, members from the Harford County Health Care Provider community, Harford County residents, the Personnel Committee here at the council, our council attorney, the county executive's admin representative, which will be Director of Administration, also Ms. Stevens from the HR department, to name a few as we move forward. We'll be advertising for both a physician and a non-physician position. And we're looking forward to the interview process and to have a new director in place by June, hopefully the first part of June, so that Ms. Austin has the month to work with that new person. So with that, I'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank you.